in the background. I'm told that he is a creationist and wishes to discuss issues of evolution and morality, but we shall see. Before I bring him into the...
Thanks for the break.
Before I do so, can I just remind people, if you would like to join the show, send a contact request through Skype, including the gist of the topical question that you would like to raise. And the Skype button above the video box on Blog TV is now working again. So you're literally one click away from sending a contact request, and we can see if we can bring you on. But hopefully we're joined by El Nino.
All right, good man. How's it going?
It's going well, thank you.
Right, so I don't know. The reason I came to this show was because I'm familiar with Oliver Scott, who was on there before. Me and him have had some pretty intellectual debates before.
Yes.
Right. Well, me and him disagreed about a lot of things. He believes in evolution theory, but the thing is, though, okay, so are you creationists, or before we begin to talk about this, you're creationists, or like what are you?
Can you get to the point?
Yeah, well, basically, I want proof of the evolution theory. I think anyone who believes in the evolution theory is an idiot.
Yeah, okay. If you would like to join the show, send a contact request to Magic Sandwich Show on Skype. It's been one of those shows. I'm sorry if you're wondering why I removed it. If you think for a moment that was a genuine Irish accent or that was a genuine caller, wake up and smell the coffee. So that means that we can get back to morality. Rather than going back to war, seeing as we have an empty chair for William Lane Craig, let's see if we can bring the topic back to him. Ontological argument, Michael. What I'm building up to, and it's taking quite a few videos to do so, is the dealing with Craig's argument or proposition when he presents the ontological argument that God is the most powerful, the most perfect, the most good, loving entity ever. It may seem a flippant point, but he talks about the greatest conceivable being. Well, I can think of a greater conceivable being than his God, because for a number of reasons, I can think of an entity that doesn't require committing global genocide, or doesn't require having the unsavory characteristic of jealousy. Where's he getting this idea of greatness from when he talks about the greatest conceivable being? Because I just do not get it.
Well, it's really quite literally from the Greeks. It has nothing to do with classical Christian philosophy and or Jewish philosophy either. The entire idea of having a perfect being is completely alien to Old Testament theology. And I think this is something that really needs to be emphasized a lot more in counter-apologetics, especially for lay people. It's to understand some of the history around Christianity and Judaism, that really fundamentally everyone knows, for instance, that there are elements that are cut and paste, but they don't understand how deep that goes. So everyone, I think, or most people know, I'd hope most people know, that the nativity scene that everyone saw in their Sunday school is a completely cut and paste picture that's derived from different elements of three gospels. And they sort of put it all together in order for it to make sense and for it to tell one story. But that's, I think, just a great example of what Christian theology and Christian philosophy is generally. It is the development of at least four different histories and four different completely different philosophies, some of which contradict each other completely. You're right to point out that the God of the Old Testament isn't perfect, or can't really be conceived of being perfect, because that's not how gods were conceived of in that historical narrative. If you read, like, the book of Job, for instance, God is more like a person who's walking around the Earth. He's like some dude who travels between cities and actually has personal relationships with people. That's very different than the idea of God that the Greeks...
I agree, and pausing you there, when you say the God of the Old Testament is not perfect, I accept that. I mean, he's absolutely hideous. Richard Dawkins' wonderful opening to one of his chapters in The God Delusion describes all his hideous traits and attributes. So how is it that Craig can stand in front of an audience with a straight face, albeit with the smarmy, smug grin, and actually tell people that the God that he believes in, which is the God of the Old Testament, is the most greatest conceivable, all moral, all loving entity? I mean, how does he get round the obvious flaws in his God's character?
Craig must be the most dazzling intellectual gymnast I've ever seen to actually, in order to actually have that make sense and to be able to keep a straight face when you're saying some of these things. It, to me, is mind-boggling, is absolutely mind-boggling, because it has to be known that some of this is absolute nonsense, even to him.
So do you actually think that he is dishonest? He's not just, how shall we say, self-deluded, that he actually knows what he's saying is crap. I mean, because the thing is, I've seen so many of these now that it's so difficult to tell.
I think now I've been doing a lot more reading on sort of motivated reasoning and that sort of thing, and looking at different, especially skepticism around the world and how what sorts of different areas of the world have to combat different types of pseudoscience claims or anti-science claims. And I think the way it makes sense to people is sort of in a Fox News-ish sort of sense, which is that they sort of Glenn Beck the argument by saying that there is a liberal or an atheist bias in the world, and that all that they're doing is essentially just providing the counter side to that. And so even if it doesn't make sense to them, they're taking sort of, again, the Glenn Becking the argument by essentially just saying that we're the alternative. We are allowing people to make up their own minds and allowing the other side to be heard, even if it's completely ridiculous and false.
I mean, I've got a slightly different take on why Craig goes for the greatest conceivable being. And it's a sort of preemptive no true Scotsman type argument, is that any argument that you can say, you can just sort of obfuscate the issue by saying, well, that wouldn't be the greatest conceivable being. I think any sensible person who was actually trying to come at this with an inquiring mind would first set out the properties, and from those properties you would derive greatest conceivable being. You don't start off with greatest conceivable being and then pick and choose what you think a greatest conceivable being is. But I would say that DPR is exactly right. Any greatest conceivable being that can think of no better way to solve his problems other than global genocide, by definition, isn't the greatest conceivable being, because I have better problem-solving skills than that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what do you reckon, Concordance?
Yep, I'm for it. No, so I don't even understand how that argument, the ontological argument, is still seriously advanced, because it's not convincing. It doesn't have a ring of truth to it. I don't know. I don't even understand how they can continue to offer it to a population that doesn't understand the argument itself.
I think
how many people understand the ontological argument?
I think what it's actually, the purpose it serves is to a niche of Christians who want to think that there are intellectual reasons for believing in a God, and so Craig comes out with this salesmanship gobbledygook, and there it comes to the conclusion, therefore God at the end, and all these people say, well, that's great, there are intellectual reasons for believing in God.